Welcome to the Live Wildly podcast, a space where we explore how to live our wildest expressions while nourishing our hearts. Here, we cover all things motherhood, spirituality, health, wellness, and more. I'm your host, Olivia Ashley, a mama, intuitive, and seeker of a joyful, inspired life. Let's dare to live wildly. Hello, lovelies. Welcome to Live Wildly. If you've listened here before, welcome back. And if you're a new listener, hello. I'm your host, Olivia Ashley, and this is my heart expression, my creative container, and truly my joy. So I'm so grateful that you have found this, you press play, and that you're here within this community that I am building and growing. And today's episode is all about preparing you for 2024 in the sense of what the stars have to say. So I brought in one of my close friends and a really wonderful astrologer, Abbie Massey, who has been deep in the study of astrology the last couple years and just loves to see life through the lens of astrology and through the lens of the planets. And she's been so insightful and supportive in my own journey to learning my astrological chart, my birth chart, kind of a sense of who I am, where I'm going, what I need, and also supporting our family and reading my children's birth charts. And so Abbie has been on the show before. She came on for episode 12, so Abbie Massey on searching for wholeness within as parents and from the stars. And that is a deep dive really into astrology, into coaching, into how do we support ourselves as parents. I brought up a lot of the themes that I was curious about and wanting to help get her insight on, because while she is an amazing astrologist, she also has a career in the education field with multiple masters. She just is so intrigued and here for the children and making those connections. And so she just has so much to share. And as I was ending my 2023, it just felt so right to say, hey, will you come on and share with our listeners in this group what you think is important for us to know and hear. So in this episode, we talk about, what she's excited for the year ahead. What do we really need to know at the start of the year? This really feels like the Pluto and what Pluto and Uranus are doing, and eclipses. So eclipses have been coming up really strongly in some of my readings, that for this year as a collective, to pay attention to the energy, pay attention to the eclipses, where it's happening in your chart, that will help provide some support in the chaos and volatility that we're really kind of poised to see this year. She talks about Neptune, which is associated with our intuition, and also how the outer planets are playing this year, connecting it to history, what's come up in past times when this has, where Neptune has been, where Pluto has been, where all the planets have kind of been, and what we might expect. And then we also share what is the theme of the year ahead, which is the title of this episode, The Chaos of Transformation. And it feels, I use the word like juicy, like, ooh, like we're about to take a bite into something that we've kind of been waiting for. And we're not sure is it going to be sweet? Is it going to be bitter? Is it going to be a bit of both? And knowing it's when we ingest that, it's going to affect us, and we are going to be transformed, and it's going to affect each one of us different, or we're going to kind of taste it in a different way. That's what's coming through right now. And also I asked, how can we fortify ourselves? What should we focus on? Where can individuals look in their charts or find more information? And just what the message the stars have for us about living wildly in 2024. So there is a lot here. I think Abbie did a really beautiful job in unpacking a lot of these really heady themes. I struggle to retain a lot of the information in astrology, even though I'm obsessed with it and look at it all the time. So I hope this episode feels really supportive, feels like you can walk away knowing some more about what's to come and maybe where you should focus, maybe put some dates on your calendars and navigate this year with trust, joy, groundedness, support, community. Those are the themes that I'm really feeling and that we talked about some in this episode. And just knowing it's another big year, right? I think every year we go, are we through that? We made it through. Now we can settle. And I think it's just, we are in such a big period. Abbie used the word volatile for a bit. And I'd say, don't let that scare you. I think that kind of creates this pressure cooker sense of it's going to show the cracks. It's going to break down systems that maybe aren't working the way they should be anymore. And a lot of it, I come back to this empowerment of ourselves that this is why we're here, right? Like humans and lifetimes, it's about growth, it's about evolution, it's about challenges and chaos and the transformation through it all. And this is kind of the life's journey. If we're alive and we're here, we're going to be facing trials and tribulations, but also have those periods of ease and flow. And I think we can integrate them all. I think that's my goal this year for myself, is to have patience as I'm moving through things, feeling things, wishing, some things would shift, or I have the bandwidth to move in other ways, but also trusting that it's not time yet. And so how do I lean into joy, into devotion, into creativity to make my life truly a living prayer? And that brings me to a card I pulled for today, and just for this group of Live Wildly folks and community and collective of for 2024, what do we need to know? So I used the Starseed Oracle by Rebecca Campbell, and I haven't touched this Oracle deck in probably a year or two. And the last week or so, I've been really drawn to it. So I am trusting there's divine insight for all of us here. And the card I pulled is the Cosmic Heart, which is about devotion, potency. And if you've been listening to the podcast, and if you keep listening, I've been talking a lot about the potency of life, and just the energy feels potent and primed. And so this card is also about making your life a moving prayer. And I'm going to read what Rebecca Campbell shares. When you surrender to a state of devotion, you find yourself flowing with all of life. You're being called to refocus your attention deep within, to the intelligence of your own heart, to bow with deep reverence to your inner temple, to live your life in devotion to this place, to make your life one big moving prayer. Perhaps you felt a bit off kilter lately, sensing that the potency of why you're doing things has gotten a little watered down or weak. Perhaps you've forgotten what made you start doing them in the first place. If so, this is your call to take a moment and reconnect with the truth at the very center of your heart, to get back to the essence of what you're about, to devote your life to what you care most about, to turn your gaze deep, 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 deep within. There are seasons for harvesting and seasons for sowing, and right now you're being called to plant your soul's seeds and sing them with deep devotion, to feed them with the sweet waters of your own soul, to lose yourself in the potency of what it is that most expands your heart, to live your life according to what makes you come alive rather than what everyone else thinks, to make your life one big moving prayer. And the soul inquiry here is, how can you make your life a moving prayer? So I think that's a beautiful card to start the year with, to note that 2024 is really our year to reclaim ourselves, to reclaim and sow the seeds that fuel us and allow us to step into the growth zone, to our genius, to our internal heart's capacity, that when we start to remove and unbound ourselves from the things that aren't working, that don't feel good, that stress us out, knowing like, yeah, we have to pay our bills and do our things, but we are smart, capable humans, and other doors open when we close doors. So trusting where you're being led, trust where you're being shown to create, to expand, to nestle in, nourish yourselves. And I really feel that we're still going through this deep shadow work, a lot of us, that as much as we think like, oh, I cleared all that, I am set to go, like, are you ready? There's more. And that's a gift though, a gift to release those stored emotions in your body, release some of the worries, some of the fears that we've dampened down. And note that we're supported, that we are facing what we're facing because it's time, that time kind of is of the essence, that there's no longer waiting or putting it off or procrastinating. There's an invitation to truly delve into the depths of yourself and create your life in devotion, in prayer, and whatever that looks like for you. So I hope you are doing well. I hope you are supporting yourself the best you can. And I do just want to make a note that Abbie and I recorded this in person, and I am still navigating the tech stuff. And it seemed my microphone was not picking up my sound very well, but you can still hear me. But just know, like, I'm sorry, I'm still learning. Bear with me that all the content is there and beautiful, and you can hear Abbie just fine. But yes, I will make sure that next time it goes off a little better. So, from my heart to yours, here's to 2024. Let's do this together. Reach out if you have any questions, any inquiries, any just feelings of just what this brings up, or what you're facing as you move through this year, because I'd love to hear from you. And as always, if you find this insightful, please subscribe, rate, and review. It goes such a long way. I sincerely appreciate it. And send it to a friend or someone that you think it'd be helpful to hear. So I will be back with another episode in 2 weeks. And until then, let's learn all about astrology for 2024. Hello, Abbie. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2024.
I can't believe it's here.
Yes, wow. The years are flying, and I'm just excited to be here with you, beautiful educator and astrologer. And today we're here to talk about the stars and the themes that are really coming through for 2024. So let's start with, what has you excited about the year ahead?
I'm really looking forward to the year ahead. I just really feel like all the inner work we've been doing in the past, even decade, is really going to allow for these long-awaited shifts to really start coming in the outer world. We're going to see manifestations come through that we've been waiting on. And so I'm just really excited to see all the transformation that's going to come this year.
Yeah, it feels big. It feels fiery. It feels like we're getting ignited, that there's going to be some challenges, but to trust ourselves. I keep hearing trust the journey, trust what comes forward, and the pace. I don't know about you, but I'm already like, whoa, we just kicked off the new year and things are moving, and it's all good things, but it's fast.
Yes, time is definitely shifting a bit, and I think the year is going to fly by.
Okay, so what do we need to know about the start of the year? We're in January currently as we're recording this, and just what, as an astrologer, has piqued your interest? What are you looking at?
Yeah, so this is such an interesting question because how we've made our calendar in the modern world is just kind of random. And so there's lots of different starts to New Year's. Like the Chinese New Year has a different start. And when I look at the astrology, it really feels like the New Year starts January 20th, 21st, around that time. So Mercury is going to clear its shadow, which means we just had a Mercury retrograde, and it's going to get back to 8 degrees Capricorn, where it originally retrograded on January 20th. And that is a degree of decision making. We're going to feel solid on certain decisions that we've been sort of thinking over as Mercury is retrograded the last 3 weeks or so. And then right after that, Pluto moves into Aquarius on January 21st. And this is a huge shift. Pluto's been in Capricorn since 2008, and it did have a little preview in Aquarius for a few months last year, but it will be in Aquarius for most of the year, and it will go back to Capricorn from September 1st to November 19th, but after that, it will be in Aquarius for the next 20 years. So this shift of Pluto into Aquarius is really major, and right after that happens, Uranus goes direct on the 27th. And Pluto is going into Aquarius, and the modern ruler of Aquarius is Uranus. So Uranus has a big impact on that Pluto. And overall, I feel like that's a really good time to get settled on what are your goals for the year? What are you trying to accomplish? setting up new patterns or habits that you're hoping to do, because it's just going to be a really good time to start those things. And as the year gets a little bit more chaotic and lots of things are happening, to have a good idea of, okay, these are my major things that I'm working on, and you'll have to be adaptable to see what's coming up throughout the rest of the year.
Okay, that's really helpful. And as a novice, can you talk about what was that Pluto and Capricorn, some of those themes that we have been seeing since 2008? And then what does it mean that Pluto's in Aquarius? So you gave us some good tips around, your habits and your goals once now we're moving to Aquarius. Can you just talk a little bit about what both of those?
Yeah, so Capricorn is the energy of long-term plans. And for the world in general, it's like, what have we done traditionally? How is the world set up? And then just the energy of Pluto is transformation. It ends things, it changes things. With Mercury and the sun in Capricorn, it helps us with that long-term planning. Like, it helps us stay organized and decide what we want to do. So it's good to use that during that time. But the Pluto being there has really just started to shift what the world is going to be like in the long term, and starting to topple all those systems that had been made since the last time Pluto was there. And so when Pluto goes into Aquarius, it's going to bring about a lot of themes of innovation. So there's been lots of talk about AI and different sorts of tech advances that will happen when Pluto goes into Aquarius. So it's the world shifting from kind of our old reality of what was normal for many, well, Pluto's orbit is 248 years. So it's this really long-term cycle. And then that is really changing.
Okay, that makes sense. And I feel like it's just revolutionary in a way. It feels like there's this big theme of insight, of new kind of maybe things coming forward, the way we're thinking, that innovation that you speak of. And a word I keep hearing is transmutation, like alchemical almost, of we're having to transmute and transfigure into take something that isn't really working, those traditional systems that we've seen not working really well, and start to say, okay, what's that next piece and what does that next systems look like? But that takes, again, that trust piece is what I keep thinking of how do we trust within ourselves and get really solid within ourselves, because our external worlds feel like there's going to be a lot of shifting. Do you see that on the internal side too? You think there'll be a reflection of sorts?
Well, I feel like we've done so much internal work in the last decade that we are prepared to now move more external, but you need to be able to still check in to your intuition and to your heart to know, what are my steps? Like you're saying, innovation is going to be coming from all over the place. We also have some really important, like Jupiter conjunct Uranus is a super big signature for scientific advancements, different things like that coming up. So there's going to be lots of innovations that come out. And this is the time, like if you have an innovative idea or things like that, to act on it, because the universe is supporting that. Aquarius really is, how do we best serve the collective, and how do we have new ideas that we've never even seen before to do that?
That makes sense. Okay. And something that really came through as I've been doing more work with Akashic Records is eclipses. I keep hearing eclipses are going to be really big. Pay attention, be aware. Can you tell us what is up with the eclipses this year and what can we expect?
Yes, so eclipses are always really important turning points, big endings, big beginnings. And it depends, obviously, where personally for you, where that's taking place in your chart, and is that interacting with any planets. But for the world in general, you notice big beginnings and endings during eclipses. And if you're interested in this, I'm just going to recommend Chris Brennan from the Astrology podcast did two amazing episodes recently on eclipses. So you could always go check that out. But they always happen in pairs. So we always have a solar and a lunar eclipse about 2 weeks apart. And the energy takes really a whole month, like a week prior to a week after. And it's just very heavily influenced by those eclipses. We have 2 eclipse sets this year. The first one is March 25th, and that's at 5 degrees Libra. So they also happen in cycles where for about 2 years, they'll happen in Libra Aries. Prior to the Libra Aries that we're in right now, it was Scorpio Taurus. So they happen in these shifting. So 3 out of the 4 are going to be in Libra and Aries. And then we're going to have 1 in Pisces, which will switch into the next year to the Pisces Virgo axis. So this eclipse, the Libra eclipse, is picking up on themes that started in October of 2023. And the South and North node are also in the sign of Libra. So the South node is endings. It's letting go of things that aren't serving us. And so with the eclipse happening in Libra, it's going to bring up like what shifts need to happen in relationships with others and just relationships with, food, exercise, just any sort of relationships we have. How can we shift to be more balanced as individuals with other people and with these other things we have relationships with? And at 5 degrees, this is bringing in our mental body. So it's going to be about, kind of shifting thoughts and shifting maybe how we communicate with others. On a larger level, this eclipse is tied to the Israeli-Palestine conflict going back a long time. This conflict has been tied to Libra Aries, so likely there'll be more developments surrounding that at the time. So that's the first eclipse. And then 2 weeks later, on April 8th, we have the Aries solar eclipse. And this one is it's really big because it's the last total eclipse we're going to have going over the US until 2045. Wow. So yeah, you can actually see it. And where the eclipse goes over tends to get impacted more. So since it's happening in the US will be more impacted than maybe Europe or other places. So if you can see it, it would be super cool. It's not coming over Colorado, but you can still see it partially. And so it's really fun to be able to see that and experience the energy. But this is a very intense eclipse. So it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of things going on around this time. One thing I want to note is that this eclipse is with the North Node. So I feel like the North Node in Aries is a cardinal fire sign. So it's like the idea of let's do it. Let's just do new things. And it's sort of how we were talking before of if you have an innovative idea, decide on next actionable steps and go for it. But overall, acting on your heart because it's 19 degrees and kind of holding that vision of the future you want. What's really exciting is a comet is also going to be passing by at the same time. And it's going to be passing the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which is happening at that time, which is related to those scientific advancements. But Mars is also conjunct Saturn at that time, which can kind of be a volatile energy. And it's conjunct Chiron. Chiron is our wounded healer. So it might bring up some vulnerabilities. And Mercury's retrograde. So there's we might have some confusion or not really seeing things clearly too. A lot of astrologers are saying this is a major turning point in world history. Wow. This eclipse, kind of what was going on before COVID started. It's going to be just see what happens.
Big.
Yeah.
And before we get into the second set of eclipses, how do we support ourselves through eclipses? What should we know? So you did a great overview of where they are and kind of what themes we can expect, but what do we need to know as we navigate eclipses? Maybe just generally.
Yeah, expect that unexpected things are going to happen. And for yourself, it's a time where things are just really shifting. Different timelines are coming in and the energy is really open. So for you personally, doing a lot of just stabilizing, grounding, because it's going to be a very, volatile time with what's going on everywhere. So being able to ground into yourself and check in to your heart and your intuition is always, a good thing to do. And for you personally, if you're curious, where is this in my chart, you would go and you would see where is Aries, where is Libra, what is this impacting? And it just depends. Eclipses affect different people differently because if you don't have planets or points, it's not that that doesn't affect you, but it's less likely to be as pivotal for you in your life. But I would say, expect that there's going to be a lot going on in the world, and to just keep trying to ground and remember from the beginning of the year, what's most important to me? What am I focused on? And how can I trust what my heart is wanting to do, and keep focused on that.
Yeah, so kind of coming back to everything that's shifting the Pluto into Aquarius on June 21st, maybe using that time to get really clear about yourself, maybe some goals, some intentions, your practices. Do things need to change, shift? So you can kind of weather the storms that might be coming and be able to have that foundation to gather and maybe I feel like community too, especially as we move through some world changing pieces, that be checking in on your friends and have those people that you can lean on to navigate. That's really helpful to hear, Abbie. Thank you. And so that brings us to the second set of eclipses, which happens later in the year. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, so the first Pisces eclipse is September 18th. So this will be a preview on what new themes are going to be coming up in this new set of eclipses that will go into 2025. It is a really interesting eclipse because it's going to be conjunct Neptune at 25 degrees, which is it's a fated degree. So it's just this really high octave of Neptune, and Neptune it's kind of your subconscious and spirituality, and so a lot of intuition and like kind of spiritual fate will be coming in. So things might just come up that were meant to happen, and you might have a deep spiritual understanding, or you might get some creative inspiration that comes to you. So
that feels really good. And I'm noticing that's Stone's birthday. So how fun that I'll
it's
get
an
to
eclipse on his
celebrate
birthday.
that and maybe some big things will come through. But that feels really supportive. It feels like things will be dropping in to just lean into creativity on that day. Maybe mark your calendars and make a note. And maybe even all these eclipses, you can go back or listen and just make notes in your calendar that this is happening, because we're looking ahead, knowing and feeling into the energy, but it allows us the preparation, which is what I love and why I had you come on and do this. But it feels like spring might be a little, like you said, volatile, or just big changes, asking us to have big transformation. And then we move into fall, which allows us to kind of maybe integrate some of what's happened. We've had a little bit more space. How does that feel? What do you think?
I think there will be some time periods that it's a little calmer. And so, yeah, there's a little more volatility that comes up at the end of October through the end of the year. And Mars is making a lot of intense conjunctions this year as well. But I do think, yeah, the Pisces eclipse could be really interesting. I'm excited to see what comes up. And a comet is coming at that point too, which this is rare that we're having two comets. And astrologically, it's new to me. What do comets mean? And they can be good omens or bad omens. And so it depends on a lot of like what is their color and what is the direction they're going and what planets do they pass by and all these different things. So for me, it'll be something to just watch because this is the first time I've really experienced a comet with eclipses. And so
To be having two, and I'm sure that's bringing it, like you said, its own energy and its own additional themes to us too, enhancing it in some regard, good or bad or neutral, who knows. But okay, so Pisces is eclipsing in September on the 18th, and then that second eclipse, when
it is
October?
October 2nd, and it's going to be at 10 degrees Libra. So this is going to be the last Libra eclipse. So the themes that have been coming up for the last year and a half will kind of close out on this one. And it has to do again with just people are transforming so much this year that our relationships with each other also have to transform. So how are we going to make those shifts and kind of holding space for like the person you're becoming, and how does that mean you're going to interact with others going forward is what I'm kind of getting a feel for that eclipse. If you have a lot of planets of points in Aries or Libra, you can look. Another astrologer I really like, Molly McCord, has a class on the South Node and North Node being in Aries and Libra. So if you're interested and you know that you have planets in those areas, you might want to check that out, because you can think more, just there's big shifts and changes. You're letting go of a lot and starting new things, possibly changing relationships, moving, changing habits. So it would be something fun to check out.
Okay, that makes sense. And you brought up Neptune. So I want to go deeper into this because this is associated with intuition. And then also some of the outer planets are doing some things. So what is happening with Neptune this year? And what do we need to know?
Yeah, so Neptune went into Pisces in 2012, and Pisces is Neptune's home sign. Pisces is the connection of the spiritual world with the material world, and being able to go back and forth between them. And Neptune really connects us to our intuition, the spiritual world. And so as Neptune's been transiting Pisces, there's been a lot of people starting to recognize their intuitive gifts, going more into that. And also just even like astrology's become way more popular and accepted and things like that. So Neptune is getting to the very highest degrees of Pisces, and it's going to reach 29 degrees, which is the highest degree this year, but it will retrograde back. So go back to 27. But that's just really, for me, that's really exciting, because we're just going to see a lot of the Neptune energy coming in. And I think that's really going to, well, shift the planet, but in a positive way,
in a way
where people might get really intense dreams. Or if you take the time to work on your intuitive gifts, you should really be able to make progress on developing those. And some people might, realize, different things that they can do that they might not have known. So Neptune's there, but Saturn is also in the sign of Pisces. So Saturn's interacting with it, and they're getting closer this year, within 9 degrees apart. So they're starting to interact more with each other. So yeah, the Saturn-Neptune interaction is really interesting. Neptune is also represents like fantasy or imagination. And sometimes with Neptune, it's hard to know like what's real, what's imagined, in this sort of dreamlike state. So Saturn in Pisces kind of sobers up Neptune. It wants to fact check illusions. And so it's going to try to figure out what is real. But Neptune is going to make that hard for Saturn. So it's this back and play. And what we might see is fake news information bubbles, like censorship happening, where we're not maybe getting the whole truth surrounding things. We have the election coming up this year. And so it's going to like, Neptune is like delusions and sometimes lies. And then Saturn's trying to confront that and like trying to figure out what's true, but it's going to be a little hard to know what's going on. And Pisces is a water sign, so there might be things going on with the ocean or climate change and water, and so things coming up with that. And another theme is sort of letting go of ideals that are no longer serving you, and really starting to invest in the ones that you're committed to. So, and on a more macro level of the world is capitalism. One of the last times there was a big impact was when the Berlin Wall fell, and it was sort of the capitalism won over communism, and thinking, oh, that's the ideal we need to go with. We need to go with capitalism. And now getting to a point where we're like, oh, well, maybe there are some flaws also with capitalism. And how do we shift again, and starting with like, what ideals do we want to bring forward into the new age? And these things will start actually happening when Saturn and Neptune, they will conjunct in Aries in 2026. So they are together for a long time, but kind of clearing out what's real, what's not real, where do we want to go, what are our new ideals, and then when they shift eventually together from, so Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac where like these big endings are closing out, and then Aries is the first sign where like these new beginnings, what is this new cycle going to be like? And so we're kind of like at the end of that, we're really looking at just waking up to, oh, we might not have known the truth. What is the truth? And all of those sorts of things.
Yeah, it feels like belief systems, history, like you said, ways of life, capitalism, consumerism, climate change. I mean, these are all really big things, and I'm sure it will go further. And settling into your truth and knowing that that might be not compromised, but attacked in some ways. I'm feeling like you said, we might not be getting the full truth, and that we have to kind of have that radar within ourselves to say, okay, I'm going to take what information I can from here and from there, and what settles in with me. And then also, I think I feel like it's going to take a while for these outer external big things that have been set up to really shift. And so I think, but a lot of that has to start with us. Like, we have to understand and fundamentally be able to change our ways of thinking and our belief systems and how we see the world, and what our place is in the world. Is everything that you're sharing is, it's like all of this is kind of going to culminate, and not everyone's going to be ready for the ride in that sense. I think if you've been doing the work and you've been really trying to untangle your own internal belief systems or disturbances or whatever that is, we might have a little bit of an easier time, but the collective has to really get there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think like check in, just know that you're going to be getting information that isn't going to be fully the truth in many times throughout this year. And so, yeah, checking in with yourself, and with that Pluto aspect in Aquarius too, is just some suggestion that maybe tech is going to somehow influence how information gets out, and censorship, and even like the voting process. So there's just some rising concern with that. And yeah, really do your own thinking. Also know like, hey, I might not know what's really the truth right now, but where can I follow my own, what I believe is right, and those sorts of things. So
That makes sense. Is there any more you want to talk about in terms of some of the outer planets or what's going on there?
yeah, I want to talk on about Uranus and Taurus, which I brought up a bit because Uranus has a big conjunction with Jupiter this year, which in the past has been a lot of scientific discoveries and developments in art, music, culture, those sorts of things. So it's in Taurus, which is a fixed earth sign. And so some of this might be actual advancements in like material science. So like new useful things. And so even for you, if that's something you're interested in, making a new product or something like that, that conjunction happens in April 20th. And so it's a great time to move forward on those ideas. And there's also a lot of revolutionary action that comes up. So labor strikes, different things like that. There may be developments in cryptocurrency, the food industry. So, lab grown meat got brought up. But I also was like, oh, this would be a great time for local regenerative agriculture. Like, it's the spring. So working with your community to localize your food, I think would be an awesome thing to do around that time.
Yes, I think that's going to be a big theme even more the next decade plus is our food, because, and I don't want to get into this tangent, but I think it's something that I'm really interested in. I know you are too. Of Stephen, my husband, was just sharing something he was reading, like the soil only has 60 or less cycles, and then it's done. And so we need to start planning. Like, it's going to take time to heal our soil, and I really hope, and I'm going to be pushing towards like an empowerment of self. I think that's how a lot of us can really go towards this year of where can you empower yourself? What is lighting you up? What are those things that you're curious about? And so with that innovation and just a lot that you've already shared, there's the possibilities to really think differently or start to make progress in ways. And so for us, that's going to look like really shifting our garden and putting some medicinal herbs. And so where are you getting your food? Where and how are you supporting yourself? If there's strikes, if there's shortages, like, are you ready? And it's not to be fearful, but it's the reality that we're facing in this world and at this time of where is your passion and your genius, and get into your zone of genius. And maybe it's not around food, and that's okay. Others might be doing that and will support you too if needed. But I feel like it's a year to one, start to hone in on where you're being called and trust that that path is right. And yeah, I think there's a lot that can feel like, oh my gosh, this is can feel a little scary and what's going to happen in the interim. So how do you feel safe, firm, everything in yourself and your local community? I think there's a lot that can be grown from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really big year astrologically, as a lot of them have been lately, and there's just a lot going on in the world. And I think it's just important to know that like astrology is meant to empower us so we can know like, okay, I'm going to expect that there's going to be maybe a lot of chaos. So yeah, to just be, what can I do to make sure my basic needs are met and that I'm grounded in myself. And I think that you're right. Like it's not a fear-based, but with Pluto, Pluto was even stabilizing Uranus because it was trining when it was in Capricorn. And so now it's leaving and it's going to be a lot more volatile. So Uranus is in Taurus, and Taurus is these systems of, it's our material world and what is stable in those areas, and Uranus is making them unstable because that's just what Uranus does. It shakes things up, it destabilizes. It also does come up with great new ideas, but Uranus is going to be direct for most of the year. So it's from the end of January till September. So a lot of new things will be coming up with that. And some of that might be inflation in the economy. So inflation on basic need products, which might be food or water or oil, those sorts of things. So we need to be able to be adaptable and possibly make new decisions. Do I need certain things or can I sell them? How do I want to look at my finances and where do I want to invest money or make sure I have certain things? So it's a good thing to reflect about.
Yeah, to just firm up. It feels like there's going to be some unsteady years ahead. Not everything is going to shift, but a lot is going to shift. And so do your best. I like that you keep sharing, be grounded, make sure you have your needs met, and also support one another. I think that we all have enough. We need to kind of shift from this mindset of lack and let's all just hoard as much as we can, and really how do we support ourselves and our friends and our family. And there is plenty to give. We just need to rework these systems. The systems that are set are not allowing for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Localize for sure. And you can support each other with all doing things that you love and being able to bring that into the community.
Yeah, I think the barter system is going to come back even more. I think that's a really a great way of, I have this and you have that and we want each of them. Can we trade and support each other outside of money or outside of the system in a way? And just getting, I think, can we have an aspect of play and fun and joy even amidst like these really big things, not forgetting that that is also core to humanity and creating innovation and creativity and support. That as much as that this might be a volatile year, can we find different ways to support ourselves and have fun amidst it all, because we can and we'll be okay. But Any other big astrological happenings to be aware of? So we've talked through eclipses and Neptune and some outer planets, but what else do you think we should have our eyes on?
Yeah, so just to wrap up Jupiter, it will leave Taurus and go into Gemini. So it will leave Taurus at the end of May, and then it will be in Gemini where it will retrograde. And just interestingly for you, it retrogrades at 21 degrees on October 9th, and your daughter is a 21-degree Gemini sun. So it will station on her sun. And that's just interesting to note when those sorts of things are happening in your chart too, because they stay for longer in a particular place, which makes it just more powerful for that particular person. But Jupiter will be in Gemini, which might be a good shift. And then, of course, every year we have 3 Mercury retrogrades, and this year they're mostly happening in fire signs. The second Mercury retrogrades will start in Virgo but go back to Leo. So in fire signs, it's transformation, new ideas that are coming in, being creative, those sorts of things. So we're just, I feel like, spending more time thinking about those topics. So the first Mercury retrograde actually happens over the first set of eclipses. So it's going to be tied up in that. And one thing that I thought was really interesting that I wanted your input on is astrologer I follow, Christopher Witecki. He says that he believes when Mercury retrograde, your brain flips from whatever you're typically dominant in. So if you're typically a logical person, it will flip to intuitive, and if you're typically an intuitive person, it will flip to logical. So it's kind of this flipping of the hemispheres in your mind. So I thought that was really interesting, and just kind of like reflecting what happens when Mercury retrogrades for you in particular.
Yeah, I can never remember what is Mercury retrograde. I think I always remember like, okay, technology might be wonky, things are kind of slowing down, maybe don't sign contracts or just be really thoughtful about them. But what are the themes that a Mercury retrograde brings?
So yes, absolutely all of those things get talked about. So Mercury is just it's related a lot to communication, but it's like your mind, it's your mental body, and how do you communicate with others. So a lot of things with communication might not go smoothly the first time, and or with technology too. So no, during that time period, maybe you're not going to get a solid yes or a solid no, or things might shift. But it has to do with like rethinking things, taking time to be more reflective, looking and just re-looking. So like maybe you have an idea and you're like, oh, well, I need to, how will I actually implement that? And maybe I thought it would go this way, but oh, I see that I actually am going to have to make some changes and that sort of thing. So it's just this, it is a slowing down, and it's kind of a being reflective. So for me, I would say I'm a more logical brain person. So I've been trying to notice like, oh, is my intuition like ramping up during that time? And so I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I'll have to take note. Everything you said makes sense. And I do feel that when Mercury retrograde happens, things don't land like in the way that I have some ideas, or it's like you said, I kind of step back and it's not my time to start something or really like say, okay, I'm gonna do this and build this or sign that. It's like, hold on, I need a little bit more time. I want to think about that. And I don't know what my dominant is. I'd say I am creative and intuitive, but due to my work, I am also constantly in my logical brain. So I'll have to think and reflect on that. I'd be curious
Yeah.
to you listeners if that makes sense, if you know right off the cuff what that feels like, or use that as a practice to just take note when it's that period of Mercury retrograde. What are you feeling and what's coming up for you?
Yes, and this next one is probably going to be a little chaotic because it is happening at the same time as the eclipses. So just knowing at like that point in time, there's going to be so much going on. It's not going to be clear, kind of like we were talking about Neptune, that we're not going to be getting really clear information. And that until Mercury then goes direct, and even a while after, because it will go back through all those degrees that it went backwards on. So it takes a while to leave and start with new degrees. And when it finally does, which the first one will get out not until May 13th, out of the shadow. So of all those eclipses.
March to May. Okay.
So after May 13th, you can be like, okay, I'm feeling a little more clear. But then it will retrograde again starting July 16th. It will hit those shadow degrees. So that means it's still direct on July 16th, but it will go back to that point. So it's going to go back to 21 degrees Leo. So this is from July 16th to September 11th, where it'll be out of shadow at 4 degrees Virgo. So what's interesting about this is, well, there's a lot going on, but we had a big Venus retrograde last summer, and it will go back over those points of what was coming up over the summer of 2023 for you. You might reflect on what was happening then, and this might bring up some of those themes. And our last one is at the end of the year, and it will be in Sagittarius. So what's really interesting is we just came out of a Mercury retrograde that was in Capricorn and Sagittarius, so it went back to 22 degrees Sagittarius. So Mercury retrogrades always start at that point that they retrograded back to. So this one will start at 6 degrees Sagittarius, go to 22 degrees, that point where it stopped this time. So it covers all of the degrees over the years. So we're going to be looking.
Like, what does that mean exactly? Like,
Okay.
how would that affect us, or what do we need to know specifically for ourselves?
So for me, this is going to be an important retrograde. It's going to go over my sun, my Uranus. So knowing like, oh, okay, if Mercury's retrograding in areas where I have planets, this might be more impactful for me. So like having my sun there, I'm going to be thinking about, well, what are my gifts? How do I share my gifts? Maybe like, how do I want to shift that? So I think with like knowing that Mercury, where it retrogrades, keeps changing, but it will change just a little bit each time. It's really causing us to look at our whole aspect of life and just like reflect, but we do it in different chunks almost.
And in different areas of
Yeah.
life get highlighted. Okay, that was really helpful, because that's what I was trying to get to, of like, how does that land for us? And it's just, I guess astrology is so fascinating because it's just opportunities to like evolve, to shift, to reflect, to change, and in different places of your life and in different expressions. Maybe it's internal, external, and in different themes, and like your home or your relationship or your work. So I think, yeah, that's helpful. That lets me make more sense of it.
Absolutely. And Sagittarius is really focuses on our belief system. So we're going to be thinking, oh, what are my belief systems? Whereas Leo is more that creative self-expression. And so when it retrogrades there, we're going to be thinking about that, like, oh, how do I bring that to the world? And then when it's in Aries, it's like, oh, how do I take that initial action? Like, what's that first step? Who do I need to connect with, or what do I need to do now? And so, yes, I think like the sign that it's in, it's going to give you themes of what we're going to be focusing on. But then also, like you're saying, you do need to go into your own chart and look at where that is for you. So like for me, Sagittarius is in my 6th house, and that's going to be like, what does my day-to-day look like? What am I doing in my day-to-day? So that just gives you more detail when you know that.
That makes sense.
And then the last, we haven't talked about Mars. Venus was really prominent last year, and it's a little quieter this year. And Mars is being very loud. So the first half of the year, Mars is going to make conjunctions. That means it will be basically like having a meeting with these other planets. So first it's going to meet with Pluto, and then Saturn, then Neptune, then the North Node, then Uranus. And so Mars is like taking action. It's okay with getting in a fight. It's okay with, advocating for itself. And it can be a little brash. And so conjunctions with Pluto and Saturn, Uranus are very volatile. So that's going to be happening throughout the year. That's about the first part of the year. Then when Mars leaves after its conjunction with Uranus, it will be about June-ish, and it will be in Gemini. And then at the end of the year, Mars retrogrades in Cancer. and it will go a little into Leo too. So it's going to end the year with its retrograde. And during that retrograde, so it's going to oppose Pluto 3 times, because it actually stations on that Pluto degree. So when it, again, when it stations, it like stops and just sits at a particular point, and that point is opposing Pluto. And so Mars does this like same retrograde every 79 years with just a little shift in like where it is. And so it's interesting seeing that this is going to be happening during the election here in the United States, that when you go back to when this same retrograde happened in the past, it happened in the late 1700s when the states were ratifying the Constitution. And then it happened again at the end of the Civil War when the 14th Amendment was being adopted. And then again in 1945, 46, which interestingly was when Donald Trump was born. And then it will happen again during this election.
Oh, I just got super goosebump too. Like, what is about to happen? So that feels really potent. It would be my word. I don't know what's gonna come, but it feels, and especially with the history of the US, something with the election and our history and
well, and the 14th Amendment is about if somebody did an insurrection against the government, then they're not allowed to run for president. And it was sort of about the Civil War, like trying to punish people who had gone against the United States, those sorts of things. But it is so interesting, which is another thing I love about astrology, that these patterns, again, they're just repeating and repeating and repeating, but they're like shifting little bits, but like you can go back and look at, well, what happened the last time this happened, and you see those patterns. And so that's really fascinating to just think about as a collective. And then, it also impacts you personally with your own natal chart. But
okay. Oof, it's going to be an interesting year. I'm excited, but it just feels like 2024 is that another culmination of just there's a lot that needs to shift if we were to go on as humanity and find new ways of thinking and being, but we're in like it feels like we're heading into high tide. Like it's rough seas, it's a little murky. Things like again that illusion I think of things might not be very clear, and yet like can we be okay amidst that? How do you individually and then us collectively find some level of okayness even when things aren't okay and we're not okay with what's happening, finding that strength and that stability? And yes, and we'll all feel it and see it very differently, but it is cool to see these things and look in history and what was coming up. So, what would you say is the theme of the year ahead? How would you describe it?
so I'm going to kind of combine those ideas that you were just talking about. Like the theme that I came up with is the chaos of transformation, because it is going to be chaotic, and transformation does not always feel easy, but it's also exciting to be like, oh, yes, we need something new. Like, how can we do it better? And it's going to be chaotic because it's hard to change. And so I think that's a big theme of the year. But again, another astrologer that I really love, Christopher Witecki, he always says this new era that we're going into is called the story we were born to live. So it's like the beginning of that. And it's in knowing that, new endings and new beginnings can be chaotic, but this is ultimately, I believe, what we came to experience and what we came to share with the world. And that's starting. And so that's really exciting.
Yeah, I feel that. That makes a lot of sense. It's kind of the death of the old self and the birth of the new self and everything in between in that transformation is that I feel like it's that rebirth energy in the sense of you're transmuting that death to come back into birth, but you didn't fully die. You're here to restart and reset, and that does bring chaos, but chaos is such a charger. It's such a catalyst, and hearing that this is the story we were born to live, like, ooh, yes, that feels so right on, and that we've been preparing for. We have done a lot of preparation as you've shared, and it's time to move forward. And so with that theme, how do we fortify ourselves? What should our focus be on based on the stars?
Well, I mean, I think that remembering, yes, Neptune is in these high degrees of Pisces. So absolutely, you need to take time to listen to your heart, listen to your intuition that's coming through, and like take action on ideas that are coming through that you receive, and maybe from a dream, maybe from meditation, and just really focus on your passions, whether that be like taking a class on something you're interested in, or just following whatever your heart's telling you to do. You can't go wrong with that. And amidst that, like taking really good care of yourself, taking care of your body, eating clean really helps us, one, be able to access our intuition, and having good exercise. Like the healthier we are, the more able we're to tap in to our intuition. And also like really just trying to shift into our heart and let go of the lower emotions that holding us down. And that shift to Aquarius, Pluto going to Aquarius, can also kind of help us be a little more neutral, but focusing more on like love, peace, and joy, so we can add that into our day to day, even when, the world is going to be a little crazy. So even though the world is facing great change and us as individuals are changing as well, and this is going to look different for every person depending on their chart, but just, sticking to knowing what helps you feel grounded, and just spending time with yourself to check in, I think would be really important.
That feels right on. Really important message. And I think every year to just come back to that message of taking care of yourself, taking care of your health. Health is wealth. I mean, it is the basics. And if you're not feeling well, there's really not much more to focus on because you're going to be in that cycle. So, how do you start to really embolden your body and just support it with the best that you can? There's no more time to wait. Like the time is now. It feels really important. And you shared a lot throughout as we were talking about where people can look, look up where the eclipses are happening in your chart. But can you share any other tips about individually how we can find out what may be influencing us or where to look for Neptune? Just what's your go-tos when you're looking, or where can someone find a birth chart? And what are just a few pieces people should highlight, if nothing else, from this episode?
Absolutely. If you want to go look up your birth chart, there are free resources online. You can just go to astro.com. You just need to know your birth time, birth location, and you can get your own chart, and you can start looking at where you have planets. And even just knowing that is super helpful, because things that are important, like I've been saying, is that these retrogrades are important and where they station. So that means where the planet stops and then goes backwards and then stops and then goes forward. It will take an aspect that usually just happens one time, like say, oh, there's one that's affecting my partner Mark this year. Jupiter going through Uranus, if it's stationed and then it went back and hit Uranus again and then went forward and hit Uranus again, you can see how that will really impact a person and their particular whatever's going on in their life, because it just is going to stay there and in your chart. And then when you look at your chart, like, oh, something is going to be happening for me at this time, and this is something I'm going to work through. And just knowing that something is going to come up, and it can come up in so many different ways, like because we have the four different bodies. We have our physical body, our emotional body, our mental body, and our spiritual body. And so these things can manifest in people's lives in different ways. Like in your physical body, like maybe somebody has an accident or something like that, but then for somebody else maybe it's just going to be, and like with Mars might cause an accident, or in your emotional body or your mental body, it might cause an argument, or just different. So it can manifest in so many different ways. So but you can just go and look and be like, okay, something's going to come up for me, I'm just going to pay attention and notice that. So you can go look at your chart if you're interested. There's so many great astrologers and information where you can look up, oh, what do these things mean, or get a reading with somebody to know more. But so those retrogrades are influential. And then I'm so excited. One of my favorite things this year is to really see how everyone's intuition develops, because I think that people are really going to start getting more connected with their spirit guides or having really important dreams, those sorts of things. With just having Neptune at 27 to 29 degrees Pisces, I'm just really excited for that energy and to see what's going to be coming through. Yeah, babies born during this time will likely have strong intuitive gifts, as we've seen with the entire time Pisces has been in Neptune since 2012. But I think that's really exciting to kind of see what those children will grow into. And that it would be a great time to like work with your intuition, develop your gifts, and spend time so that you can access that yourself.
I love it. And that feels important. I think as we continue to shift forward as a planet, our intuitive side, our consciousness, our heart centeredness, and just learning, I feel like more and more is going to be uncovered to the possibilities of ourselves and what we can truly do as humans. That is at least what fascinates me and what I want to look into. And what a great thing. I mean, we can definitely use more intuition and that connection. It brings so much to life. And I think we've sadly just been really disconnected from ourselves, from the planet, from our food, from everything. And so I hope that some of this will kind of also focus in on supporting those aspects of intuition with ourselves and that knowing, but also how we interact and are a part of this world and see ourselves in this. So to close us out, what do the stars have to say about living wildly in 2024?
The stars say it is absolutely the year to go for your wildest dreams. The stars are supporting you and following your heart and bringing to life new innovative ideas you may have. So this
Love
is the
it.
year.
This is the year. It's a big year. It feels big and momentous, challenging, change, yet trust. I think that's where I want to leave us. Trust your heart, trust yourself, navigate what's coming up for you, and know everything we go through is to evolve, to grow, to become hopefully better. At least that's where we're putting our stake down and saying, this is the life I'm living and going towards. So I think this is a perfect time if you're listening to this in January to take some time to carve out whether it's a vision board, some intention setting, reflection maybe on the year that we just came out of, and deciding, where is your heart asking you to go? What is pulling you, and just allow yourself to follow. So Abbie, as always, you're so wise, incredible astrologer. Thank you for spending this time breaking this down. And if people want to learn more or get an astrology reading with you, where can people find you?
Absolutely. My website is sun and moon astrology and coaching.com. So you can connect with me there. And yeah.
I love it. I will link it below in the show notes. And thank you so much, Abbie.
Yeah.
We'll have
Thank
you
you,
back
Olivia.
soon, I'm sure. Thank you so much for listening to the Live Wildly podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. It goes a long way to helping gain new listeners and fills my heart to see your reviews every time it comes through. It just keeps me inspired and going on this journey. And if you'd like to learn more or follow Olivia further, you can check me out at www.olivia-ashley.com. And just there's a lot there that you can check out, and you can learn more about the podcast episodes. You can also follow along on Instagram at wildlyolivia or at Live Wildly Podcast. So thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate all of you listeners, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks again.